how do you deal with long solo stints during ultras? ? My head wobbled a bit with it on my first. So very good question. Something I struggled with on the canal, as I've already referenced. What I've already mentioned is the people that popped up along the way that I interacted with gave me a real boost, which just goes to show how much damage being on your own for that long can do if you don't keep your head under control and keep yourself level. So key thing is I always go into any long run and any long event with planned things to think about. And for me, that was actually a whole load of structural business things that I wanted to try and unpack in my own time. I had essentially 10 hours of uninterrupted time to myself along the canal, which is not an opportunity that I get very often. So I thought I'd try and unpack these things in my head as I went, really reflect on what I wanted to do differently after this process had come to an end, what I could have done differently during the process itself in terms of what wasn't good for me, what made me feel a bit less happy, what I maybe got wrong. And that's a good way to just sort of keep yourself stimulated. But even with that, I will admit how much value it gave me when I saw other people. For example, we had the wintering intake with Omnia doing their 12 hours max distance over that weekend, and there was a girl called Chelsea who was running from Glasgow through to Edinburgh that I knew I was going to bump into from the sort of wintering group chat. But when we bumped into each other halfway, what was so awesome was to hear that she'd never ran more than 8K before she had started the wintering intake with us, and she had just crossed the 50K mark, and she was continuing to run all the way to the 85K mark to Edinburgh, which was just so class for me to hear that we'd helped her experience that process, and so great for me to know that I was out there suffering with somebody else. So this time, what I suffered with on the canal and the rest of it with more than I did with the double brutal per se is the lack of that, which is what Chelsea gave me that no one else did the whole time, was a bit of a sense of in-person suffering and solidarity. The double brutal, there were other people doing the event, and I'd occasionally sit with them on the bike and we'd sort of just be like, oh, ha, ha, isn't this hard? Ha, 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 ha. Oh, what terrible decision making. And then we'd sort of move on. Whereas this was all off my own back. And I had the support team. We were all tired. We were all loopy. Jamie covered, I think, just under 100K total in the end as well. Fair play to him. But he wasn't quite as beaten up as I was. So it was just good to know that the wintering intake were doing this all over the world, and there was a bit of suffering solidarity there, but it was difficult to have faith in that during the actual event itself, where I just felt like I was just on my own. So events, lean into the people around you. If you find yourself in groups or you find yourself at aid stations, really tap into that human interaction. Plan what you're going to think about and acknowledge how you respond to things emotionally, so that next time you can prepare for them in your head a little bit more, because we can't control a lot of things, but what we can control is how we respond to things. So keeping your emotions under control is what I think ultra endurance trains us to do at its core. So the more exposure to these things you have, the better prepared you'll be for next time. If you're doing a self-supported event like I was, then yeah, you're going to need to plan a little bit more diligently, because you can't tap into that. There's somebody to my left and to my right that's doing the same thing as me, and we can all suffer in solidarity together. So a few things to bear in mind there, but yeah, it's head wobble is fairly standard, but something that can be trained and developed over time.